Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna T536LiXP top panel battery chainsaw. Listen to this thing run. The customer complaint was that it ran erratically, and I would have to agree with him on that. Let's pull this bar off of here, take a closer look, and listen to it again. I think we can certainly describe that as erratic. So let's split this thing open and take a look inside and see what there is to see. The screw heads here are all Torx, and all the screws that you need to remove are exposed. There's no hidden ones in here. So what you see is what you get, and it really doesn't come apart that hard. The worst part about this job is going to be the brake handle. Let's finish getting the rest of these screws out of here. Well, once we get this thing opened up, what we're going to do is replace the trigger switch. That type of behavior that we're seeing could typically be related to a bad trigger switch. So check out this brake handle. This thing is, it doesn't just fall off of there. Actually, we're going to put this screw back in on this side and set the brake. And now we're going to try and take it apart again. Just be careful, because on the chain side of this brake handle, there's a spring hidden underneath there. So you see the spring, and it's got to go in there a certain way. So what I usually do in these situations is just whip out my smartphone and take a picture of it. It goes flying across the shop and I'm able to find it, and I have to put it back in there. At least I know now how it's supposed to look. Separating these two halves is no big deal. There's nothing connecting this top half to the bottom half except for the screws that we removed. There's no wiring or anything like that. It should just lift right off of here. Kind of dirty underneath here, and I would suggest that if you own one of these saws, maybe once a year at least, depending on how much you use it, you should maybe open it up and blow this out. Might be part of a good maintenance plan to keep it clean underneath here. So our trigger switch lives underneath that wiring harness by my hand there. You can see the switch would fit in just like that. It's oriented that way. This wiring harness just kind of lifts out of place, and it'll move far enough for us to reach underneath there and pull the switch out. The switch isn't screwed down, it's just kind of in a little holder area there, so we can lift it right out. It couldn't be simpler. There's a little tab on that yellow wiring harness. Push the tab, pull the wire out of the switch, and snap the wiring harness into the new switch. Now, after you've reinstalled the new switch, make sure that all your wiring is laying flat there's no wires hung up in an area where they're going to get pinched when you put that top cover on there. Any pieces like that lanyard hook in the back, make sure they all go back in before you put the halves together. And that was really simple. It snapped together flush, first time. Not that big a deal. Now, we didn't do any testing on that switch to determine that was the problem. We just guessed that that was what we needed. And I'm only putting 2 screws in here right now before I test it, and if it tests fine, then I'll put the rest of the screws in. But if I got to dig back in there and, you know, maybe I forgot to put a wiring harness together, or maybe I disturbed something when I blew out all the debris, there's only 2 screws I got to remove if I got to take it back apart. And that kind of goes for a lot of different things that I work on. If it's something you think you need to test, then, you know, don't put all the screws in there right away. So you can see that spring is giving me grief. It fell off while I was trying to put the handle on. And there's a couple of tabs on that handle, a big one on the bottom and a small one on top. The big one drops into the recess of the saw, activates the switch. The top one lands between the 2 ends of the spring. And once it snaps into place like that, then you'll be able to you know, reach around and make sure that the other side is in place. And you can put the screws in now. And the reason we had to put the handle on before we could test it was that the handle, I mean, it is a chain brake, but it's also an electric switch. So when the brake is applied, it cuts power to the motor. And we had the brake on, so that we could never have tested the motor with the brake on. We had to put the handle in place to turn the brake off. Alright, we got it together enough that we could put the battery in and give it a test. So that's all I have for you on the Husqvarna T536LiXP top panel battery chainsaw trigger switch replacement. Thanks for watching. Later.